Why does reaching your first $100,000 feel impossible, while some people seem to build wealth effortlessly? While you're grinding through years of $500 monthly contributions that barely seem to grow, others appear to accumulate substantial assets almost automatically. Here's what creates this apparent advantage. Early wealth building depends entirely on your personal contributions and sacrifice, but later stages can benefit from compound growth, though not as predictably or quickly as many financial influencers claim. Over the next few minutes, I'll reveal 7 principles for systematic wealth building with honest timelines about what actually works. The 4th principle shows when compound growth can become meaningful, but I need to be upfront about something most content ignores. This typically requires decades of patience. Market volatility will disrupt your progress repeatedly, and there are no guaranteed timelines or returns in real investing. Important reality: building substantial wealth involves significant risk, requires sustained discipline over 15 to 30 plus years, and depends on favorable economic conditions beyond your control. If you want realistic wealth education without dangerous oversimplifications, subscribe and comment "Realistic Building" below. But that's just the beginning. What I'm about to reveal shows why the Boulder Pusher's threshold moment changes everything about understanding wealth building. 1. The Boulder Pusher's threshold moment. Understanding why early wealth building feels discouraging despite mathematically sound strategies requires recognizing that human psychology expects linear progress, while investment growth operates on entirely different principles. This disconnect creates frustration that causes many people to abandon effective long-term approaches before they have adequate time to demonstrate results. Mountain physics faced momentum challenges that perfectly illustrate why initial wealth accumulation feels disproportionately difficult compared to later stages. 2 workers received identical assignments to move massive boulders from valley floors to mountain peaks, but their approaches to effort and expectations created dramatically different psychological experiences. The exhausted climber expected immediate elevation gains from each step up the mountain path. When his first hour of intense effort produced only modest altitude improvement, he became frustrated and convinced that his technique was fundamentally flawed, or that the task was impossible for someone with his capabilities. This climber would frequently stop to measure his progress, becoming discouraged when the remaining distance still appeared overwhelming compared to ground already covered. His approach seemed logical. Tracking progress should provide motivation and evidence of effectiveness. The patient boulder mover understood something crucial about physics that his colleague missed entirely. Massive stones require enormous initial effort before momentum principles begin providing assistance rather than resistance. He focused on consistent force application rather than measuring immediate displacement. The boulder mover's approach demanded faith in physical laws that weren't immediately observable. His early work appeared less productive because he wasn't constantly celebrating minor elevation gains or adjusting his technique based on short-term feedback. After sustained effort, physics principles transformed the situation dramatically. Once the boulder reached sufficient momentum on appropriate terrain, gravitational forces began assisting movement rather than constantly resisting it. The patient mover's systematic preparation had created conditions where natural laws worked in his favor. Modern wealth building demonstrates similar patterns under favorable market conditions. Your $500 monthly contributions, earning $200 annually, feel pointless compared to your $6,000 annual savings efforts. This mathematical reality creates psychological discouragement that causes many people to quit before compound growth reaches meaningful scales. Critical reality check. Unlike predictable physics, financial markets involve substantial volatility that can temporarily reverse years of progress. The momentum metaphor illustrates potential acceleration, but shouldn't create false confidence about guaranteed outcomes or ignore the significant risks involved in long-term investing. 2. The 3-tool workshop strategy. Accelerating wealth building requires coordinating multiple approaches rather than perfecting any single strategy, though even coordinated efforts involve substantial challenges and require sustained discipline over extended periods. Understanding why isolated tactics typically produce limited results, while integrated approaches can enhance effectiveness, determines whether you'll build wealth systematically or remain frustrated by slow progress. Medieval craftsmanship faced productivity challenges that reveal why comprehensive strategies outperform single-focus approaches for long-term wealth creation. Two artisans inherited identical workshops but approached their trade with fundamentally different tool philosophies and operational strategies. The single-hammer carpenter believed that mastering one superior technique would produce optimal results for any woodworking project. He invested considerable time perfecting elaborate hammering methods and developing specialized approaches for various applications, using only his preferred tool. This carpenter's approach seemed focused and efficient because it eliminated tool selection complexity and allowed deep expertise development in one area. His hammer skills became genuinely impressive to observers who admired his specialized craftsmanship. The complete toolbox artisan assembled 3 coordinated tools that worked together systematically. His saw increased cutting capacity, enabling him to process larger projects and generate more raw materials for construction. His level ensured precise measurements and quality control, preventing waste that would reduce profitability. His drill created precise connections that enhanced structural integrity and project value. Each tool served specific functions that the others couldn't replicate, but their coordinated use multiplied overall effectiveness significantly compared to any single tool working alone. Modern wealth building benefits from similar coordination through 3 integrated strategies. The saw represents income growth, developing skills, pursuing promotions, or creating additional revenue streams that provide more fuel for wealth building. The level represents expense optimization, tracking spending, eliminating waste, and redirecting resources toward investments rather than lifestyle inflation. The drill represents smart investing, using tax-advantaged accounts, low-cost index funds, and systematic contribution plans that create precise wealth accumulation. Using only one approach limits results regardless of expertise level. Earning more without controlling expenses leads to lifestyle inflation. Cutting expenses without increasing income creates artificial ceilings. Smart investing without adequate capital provides minimal absolute returns. Critical reality check. Even coordinated approaches require decades of sustained application, favorable economic conditions, and significant risk tolerance. Market downturns can temporarily reverse progress from all 3 strategies, and individual results vary based on employment stability, health issues, and economic cycles beyond personal control. 3. The Miller's Grain Storage Challenge. Wealth building success depends heavily on resisting instant gratification in favor of long-term benefits, though this psychological challenge requires careful balance to avoid unhealthy extremes that could damage relationships and mental well-being. Understanding why immediate consumption feels more satisfying than delayed investment determines whether you'll develop sustainable wealth-building habits or abandon effective strategies during difficult periods. Agricultural communities throughout history faced resource allocation decisions that reveal why delayed gratification creates long-term advantages despite short-term psychological costs. 2 farmers inherited identical harvests, but approached consumption and storage with fundamentally different time horizons and psychological frameworks. The harvest eater consumed all available grain immediately, creating abundant meals during the productive season. His approach seemed logical and emotionally satisfying because it provided immediate validation of his agricultural efforts through visible lifestyle improvements and social celebration. This farmer enjoyed rich feasts, shared generously with neighbors, and felt prosperous during harvest periods. His immediate consumption strategy created genuine pleasure and social connections that provided psychological rewards for his hard work. The seed saver endured temporary hunger by storing significant portions of his harvest for future planting seasons, despite social pressure to celebrate and immediate desires for abundant consumption. His approach required faith in future benefits that weren't immediately visible or emotionally satisfying. The saver's strategy demanded psychological discipline during periods when abundant food was available, but he chose modest consumption instead. His neighbors sometimes questioned his seemingly unnecessary frugality during prosperous times. After several growing seasons, the mathematical difference became substantial. The harvest eater remained dependent on each season's success and faced potential starvation during poor growing years. The seed saver had built agricultural wealth that provided security and expanding production capacity. Modern wealth building faces identical psychological challenges. Our instant gratification culture conflicts with decade-long investment strategies that require sacrificing immediate pleasures for uncertain future benefits. Saving $500 monthly for investment feels less satisfying than spending that money on immediate lifestyle improvements. Critical balance needed. While delayed gratification enables wealth building, extreme frugality can become psychologically unhealthy and socially isolating. The goal involves developing a long-term perspective while maintaining reasonable present-moment enjoyment and social connections. Successful wealth building should enhance life quality rather than creating anxiety-driven deprivation that undermines relationships and mental health. The challenge lies in finding a sustainable middle ground between immediate consumption and excessive future focus. 4. The water wheel's power generation investment returns can eventually begin outpacing personal contribution efforts under favorable market conditions, though this threshold depends on sustained positive performance that markets don't reliably provide. Understanding when this mathematical shift might occur helps explain why wealth building can potentially accelerate over time, but shouldn't create false expectations about guaranteed outcomes or predictable timelines. Hydraulic engineering throughout history faced power generation challenges that illustrate why systematic approaches can eventually become self-sustaining under optimal conditions. Two mill operators inherited identical grain processing responsibilities, but approached power generation with fundamentally different strategies and timeline expectations. The manual laborer relied entirely on his personal physical energy to operate grinding equipment daily. His output remained directly proportional to his individual effort. Working harder produced more flour, but stopping work immediately halted all production. This approach felt reliable because results correlated directly with personal input. The laborer's strategy provided immediate feedback and complete control over daily outcomes. When he needed more flour, he could work longer hours and generate predictable increases in production. The water wheel engineer invested enormous time and resources in building hydraulic systems that would eventually generate power automatically. His early construction phases produced no immediate flour output, despite months of intensive engineering work that appeared unproductive compared to his colleagues' obvious daily achievements. The engineer's approach required faith in mechanical principles that weren't immediately observable or profitable. His complex water channel construction, gear assembly, and wheel installation seemed inefficient compared to straightforward manual labor. Once operational, the water wheel transformed the situation dramatically. The automated system generated continuous grinding power without requiring daily human energy input. The engineer could focus on maintenance, expansion, and other projects while his wheel produced flour around the clock. Modern investment accounts can demonstrate similar patterns when market conditions cooperate favorably. Around $50,000–$100,000 invested, annual returns might begin approaching your contribution amounts. At a $100,000 earning 7%, you generate $7,000 annually, potentially matching or exceeding many people's savings capacity. Critical warning: market crashes can temporarily break your financial water wheel, producing negative returns that reverse years of progress. The 2008 financial crisis destroyed 40 to 50% of many portfolios, requiring years to rebuild. Unlike mechanical systems, financial markets involve substantial volatility that can disrupt this progression unpredictably. The water wheel concept illustrates potential acceleration under favorable conditions, but shouldn't create overconfidence about market reliability or guaranteed timelines. 5. The merchant's multiple revenue streams. Accelerating wealth accumulation often benefits from developing multiple income sources, rather than relying exclusively on salary increases, though this approach requires careful balance to avoid sacrificing health, relationships, or primary job performance. Understanding why diversified earning strategies can enhance savings rates determines whether you'll build wealth faster while maintaining a sustainable work-life balance. Medieval commerce faced revenue challenges that reveal why income diversification typically outperforms single-source dependency for wealth creation. Two traders inherited identical amounts of capital, but approached business development with fundamentally different strategies about risk distribution and growth potential. The single shop owner focused all his energy and resources on perfecting one retail location. He worked long hours optimizing inventory, customer service, and operational efficiency within his established business model. His approach seemed logical because it allowed deep expertise development and complete control over one profitable venture. This merchant's strategy felt secure because his income source was predictable and under his direct management. When business improved, he could clearly attribute success to his focused efforts and specific operational improvements. The diversified trader developed multiple complementary income streams while maintaining his primary business operations. He allocated time to consulting services based on his merchant expertise, small-scale trading ventures in different markets, and skill-based services like bookkeeping for other businesses. The diversified approach required more complex time management and initially produced modest additional income from secondary activities. Critics argued that divided attention might compromise his primary business performance. After several years, the mathematical difference became significant. The single shop owner remained vulnerable to market changes, seasonal fluctuations, or problems affecting his one income source. The diversified trader had built resilient revenue streams that provided security and accelerated wealth accumulation. Modern applications include maintaining strong primary job performance while developing complementary skills through freelancing, consulting, or side businesses that leverage existing expertise. The key involves strategic time allocation rather than overworking. Critical balance needed. Additional income strategies should enhance rather than compromise your primary career, health, or relationships. Pursuing multiple revenue streams can become counterproductive if it creates unsustainable stress, damages family relationships, or reduces performance in your main job. The goal involves intelligent diversification that builds on existing strengths rather than desperate attempts to work excessive hours across unrelated activities. Quality time management often produces better results than simply increasing total working hours. 6. The Royal Treasurer's Expense Audit. Strategic expense management involves redirecting resources from low-value purchases toward wealth-building investments rather than eliminating all spending, though this requires careful balance to maintain a reasonable quality and social connections. Understanding the difference between smart allocation and destructive deprivation determines whether you'll build wealth sustainably or create psychological stress that undermines long-term success. Kingdom financial management throughout history faced resource allocation challenges that reveal why intentional spending choices outperform arbitrary cost-cutting for wealth creation. Two royal treasurers managed identical budgets but approached expense oversight with fundamentally different philosophies about value optimization and resource distribution. The careless spender paid whatever merchants demanded without questioning necessity, value, or alternative options. He approved all requests from various departments, maintained expensive subscriptions to services regardless of actual usage, and automatically renewed contracts without negotiating better terms or evaluating alternatives. This treasurer's approach seemed generous and diplomatic because it avoided difficult conversations about priorities or budget constraints. His departments appreciated his accommodating attitude, and he felt popular among colleagues who never faced spending restrictions. The strategic allocator conducted systematic audits of all expenditures, identifying resources that could be redirected from low-value purchases toward kingdom infrastructure investments that would generate long-term value. He canceled unused services, negotiated better terms with essential vendors, and eliminated redundant expenses. The allocator's approach required more complex decision-making and occasionally disappointed people whose requests were denied or modified. His budget reviews seemed time-consuming compared to his colleagues' automatic approval process. After several years, the difference became substantial. The careless spender's kingdom maintained current operations but built no lasting assets or emergency reserves. The strategic allocator had redirected thousands of coins from wasteful spending toward investments that strengthened the kingdom's long-term security and prosperity. Modern expense optimization involves tracking spending patterns, eliminating subscriptions you don't use, and redirecting saved money toward investments rather than lifestyle upgrades. Focus on major categories: housing, transportation, food, where small percentage improvements create significant absolute savings. Critical balance needed. Smart expense management shouldn't eliminate all enjoyment or damage social relationships. The goal involves intentional allocation rather than extreme deprivation. Reasonable entertainment, social activities, and life comforts contribute to psychological well-being that supports long-term financial discipline. Sustainable wealth building enhances rather than restricts life quality when approached with appropriate balance and realistic expectations. 7. The scholar's marathon mindset. Sustainable wealth building requires marathon-level patience and realistic expectations about timelines, though this long-term perspective must be balanced with reasonable life enjoyment to avoid psychological stress that could undermine both financial goals and personal well-being. Understanding the difference between productive patience and destructive obsession determines whether you'll maintain healthy wealth-building habits over decades. Academic achievement throughout history faced persistent challenges that reveal why marathon thinking outperforms sprint expectations for long-term success. 2 students received identical doctoral research assignments requiring extensive investigation and gradual knowledge development over many years. The student expected rapid mastery and immediate validation from his learning efforts. When his first semester produced modest progress rather than dramatic breakthroughs, he became frustrated and convinced that his approach was fundamentally flawed or that advanced education was beyond his capabilities. This student would frequently change research topics, abandon projects when progress felt slow, and compare his early-stage work to established scholars' finished publications. His approach seemed logical. If current methods weren't producing obvious results quickly, surely different approaches would work better. The doctoral researcher understood that meaningful expertise required sustained study, gradual skill development, and patience through inevitable periods when progress felt invisible or disappointing. He celebrated small milestones, completing literature reviews, mastering specific methodologies, publishing preliminary findings, while maintaining focus on decade-long development goals. The researcher's approach demanded psychological resilience during phases when advancement seemed minimal compared to the enormous effort invested. His systematic preparation often appeared less impressive than his colleagues' dramatic strategy changes. After years of sustained effort, the difference became clear. The sprint student had accumulated superficial knowledge across multiple abandoned topics, but lacked deep expertise in any area. The doctoral researcher had built genuine mastery that opened career opportunities and created lasting professional value. Modern wealth building benefits from a similar marathon mentality. Celebrating milestones like $10,000, $25,000, and $50,000 provides psychological encouragement while pursuing larger goals that require decades to achieve. Critical balance needed. Marathon thinking shouldn't become obsessive behavior that eliminates present moment enjoyment or damages relationships. The goal involves developing a sustainable, long-term perspective while maintaining a reasonable life quality, social connections, and mental health. Wealth building should enhance rather than consume your life experience. Sustainable success requires finding appropriate balance between future-focused discipline and present-moment well-being that supports decades of consistent effort. These 7 principles contain legitimate insights about systematic wealth building. Understanding psychological thresholds, coordinating multiple strategies, managing delayed gratification, recognizing compound potential, diversifying income, optimizing expenses, and developing marathon patience. However, I must emphasize what the original content dangerously oversimplifies. Reaching $100,000 typically requires 15 to 30 plus years for most Americans, not the claimed 7.8 years. Market volatility will disrupt your progress repeatedly. Economic downturns can reverse years of accumulated wealth, and individual results vary dramatically based on circumstances beyond your control. While these concepts provide valuable frameworks for long-term thinking, they shouldn't create unrealistic expectations about guaranteed outcomes or encourage unhealthy financial obsessions that damage relationships and mental well-being. Sustainable wealth building should enhance life quality, not consume it through anxiety-driven deprivation. What's your biggest challenge? Maintaining discipline through market uncertainty, managing realistic timelines, or balancing financial goals with life enjoyment? Share your honest experience below and subscribe for financial content that prioritizes realistic expectations over dangerous oversimplifications. Remember, wealth building involves substantial risk, requires decades of patience, and success isn't guaranteed regardless of discipline.